Hello, it's Book Quote Wednesday and the word is pain. And today I am reading from my young adult fantasy, The Comeback of the King. The king can exercise power over anyone who was conceived within his kingdom, which is roughly the area of what we today would call the city of Salisbury in Wiltshire. And that includes my teen hero Ted. Only Ted, for some reason, is not only immune to this, but he also has the power to free other people from the king's thrall. And he has just accidentally done this for the first time, freeing his friend and his boss, Malcolm, and this is the king's reaction. The king's scream cut through the revelries. Every one of the rejoicing royal subjects in the lounge stood and stared at their master as he broke free from the dancing. His face as he staggered towards his queen was contorted and tears streamed down his cheeks. Only the mindless music played on, the unseen musicians oblivious to the disaster. The queen was immediately on her feet, pressing through the crowd to reach her husband. "Continue," she snapped. "Celebrate." She led him over to their seats again while, slow and hesitant, the dancing began once more. "I felt a royal subject go," the king whispered. "I lost a royal subject." "Mortals die, my love, you know that." She gently guided him to sit down. "My love, since I returned this morning, 9 of my royal subjects have died of age or illness or accident. I know it happens. And others come and go all the time, crossing the boundaries of my kingdom in their cars. That is part of the natural order of things. But, my sweet, I have had a royal subject taken from me. Taken! Once he served me. Now he serves another." He rubbed his sleeve across his face to banish the tears. The queen was pleased and relieved to see that they were tears of grief, not pain. She was even more pleased that when he took his arm away again, his face was set with a new resolve. "Whom does he serve?" she asked, though she could guess, and she simply wanted to achieve the desired result. "I cannot say, but it would be a strange coincidence." The king trailed off. A member of the hotel staff was picking her way cautiously towards the royal couple with a sense of purpose. The king's hostile glare was enough to make the girl nervous, but not enough to dissuade her. She was carrying one of those ubiquitous but baffling objects called a phone. Your Majesty, sir, you, have a call?" The king took the phone, as he was obviously expected to, and looked at it, mystified. He put it to the side of his head, as he had seen others do. "Yes?" he asked. Nothing happened. The girl coughed and made a very discreet, embarrassed kind of circling motion with her hand. The queen took the phone, turned it the other way up, and gave it back to the king. Suddenly there was a voice speaking in his ear, clear as day. "Hello? Hello? Anyone there?" "Yes," said the king. He pulled his head back in surprise and looked at the small hole the voice had come out of. Then he realised the voice was still speaking and put the phone back to his ear. "The king?" "What?" "I said, am I speaking to the individual who calls himself the king?" "You are speaking to the king," said the king, with a mildness that made the queen perk up hopefully, because she knew it could presage an outburst of royal anger. The king was having none of this calls himself nonsense. He was the king, and that was it. And since no royal subject would address him that way, the king began to suspect who might be behind this call. He strained his senses to see if he could feel anything at all about this man. There was nothing. Whatever power the phone used, it completely divorced the voice from its owner. "I represent Mr. Ted Gorse," said the stranger. "I thought you might. Do you have a name of your own?" The caller ignored the question. "We have some questions to ask you. I would have been interested in a face-to-face meeting, but under the circumstances, well, this seems safer." "Questions," said the king. The stranger seemed to take it as license to proceed. "Who exactly are you? Where are you from? How did you get here? You might have gathered we weren't entirely expecting you." The king snorted. "Where am I from? Where is the land you stand on? From? I was here when the first men followed the retreating ice. They expected to find me, and so I emerged." "Expectation isn't always enough," the voice pointed out. "I know a number of people who expected not to go to jail." "I will ask my own questions," the king snapped. That was enough pandering to this turncoat. "I felt your loss. How did the boy steal you from me? Does he intend to steal others away too? How can anyone choose not to serve their rightful king? One moment, please. There was a murmur of consulting voices, which suddenly got loud and emphatic before quietening down again. Then, in order, he doesn't know. Yes, if he can work out how, and I will answer the third question. I don't know how he got such a hold on me that I was prepared to hand Ted over without a quibble, and I don't know how he snapped me out of it, but I am delighted that he did. If I had the choice, then I would choose not to serve you because you're dangerous. You don't recognise any law, and without law we are just savages. Without law, you are my royal subjects, the king corrected him. And that is why the people of this land once used the law to cut a king's head off. Blood roared in the king's ears. They did what? His shock was almost surprised by the surprised blurt in the background behind the man's voice. The man suddenly went muffled as if he had turned his head away from the phone, and the king could just make out in tones of astonishment, I thought you did GCSE history. He could hear the words but not understand them. Likewise, the muffled, slightly defensive reply in a younger man's tones meant nothing to him, something about gotta be and Spanish Civil War. Then the man's voice was back to normal. Anyway, but the king had had enough of this. Unlike any king of yours, mortal man, I could order every one of my royal subjects to throw themselves on the sword of anyone who would attack me, and they would do so, gladly, joyfully, because that is the natural order within my kingdom. He knew his voice was rising, and he was vaguely aware of the Queen's hand on his arm and trying to calm him. He shook it off. If your king allowed his head to be cut off, then he was weak and a fool. Do not imagine I will make any such mistake, and do not imagine I will spare you or the boy from a similar fate. There is no place in my kingdom for traitors. If you have any sense at all, wherever you are now, you will simply start going in a straight line and do not stop until you are a long, long way away from me, and do not return. Somewhere in all that he had stood up and started pacing about the room, while his court looked on, awed by their monarch's wrath. He took a breath and spoke more quietly. I am not a fool. I fully realise that my kingdom is a fraction of the size of this island, and the world beyond is even bigger. His voice rose to a final shout. But within my kingdom, I am the law, and there will be no other. He ended the conversation by hurling the phone across the room, then slumped into his chair next to the Queen. Continue rejoicing, he ordered with a weary wave of his hand. Then he took the Queen's hand and gently squeezed. Oh, my love, what is this place we are in, where royal subjects of mine can flout my law with impunity? Once the land itself would have handed them over to me. We need the hunter, the Queen said firmly. For a moment they were both lost in a reverie of how it had once been. The hunter, the elemental force at the king's command, leading his hunt ahead of the storm across the sky. And as I have told you before, my dearest, the hunter is gone. This age no longer requires his skills. But no matter, we will raise up another. He rapped his knuckles on the armrest and smiled at his consort. We will raise up another, he repeated, fit for this age. Change of scene. Malcolm looked thoughtfully at the phone as the display went blank. What did he say? Ted asked nervously. I think negotiations are broken down, if they ever began. I'm also pretty certain you can't go back home, not for as long as the king can still command your family. They'll just hand you over and be grateful for the privilege. Until you know exactly what you did to me. Ted blinked furiously and quickly looked away. Couldn't go home. You did say that apparently the king can't command everyone. Yeah, Ted mumbled. He said something about royal subjects. I got that too. Ted heard a beep as Malcolm pressed more buttons, and then he heard the voice of Diana Jackson, Malcolm's wife. Malcolm leaned over and held the phone up so Ted could listen in. Hello? Hello, darling. If I mentioned the king, what would that mean to you? Oh, I don't know. Elvis? And if I said the king wants Ted? I'd ask how Ted knew Elvis. Dare I ask why you might say this? Malcolm grinned. We've got a guest staying the night. Talk to you soon. He hung up and put the phone away. That's assuming you don't mind? No, Ted swallowed, suddenly almost overcome. No, I don't. Thanks. Malcolm put the Jaguar into gear and fixed his gaze on the wing mirror, waiting for a break in the stream of cars. So, what's the capital of Spain? Madrid? Well, I'm glad GCSE history taught you something. The car pulled out into the traffic. Remember, you can buy my books at www.benjeeps.com. See you next time.